The Orphan Killer. This movie has got some hype regarding its gore, as it's meant to be one of the most sort of torturous and gory films you can watch in modern horror cinema. So does it live up to the hype? Well, it is gory, but that's about the only thing it has going for it, I have to say. So The Orphan Killer is basically a slasher at its core, and basically focuses on the titular character, basically the Orphan Killer, who we're told was... in a flashback, basically he's this kind of little boy who is witness to his parents getting murdered and is put in a sort of an orphanage with his sister. His sister is basically adopted whilst he is, and he sort of acts out, obviously being after traumatised over this sort of seeing his sort of family get killed, and basically the kind of the nuns in this orphanage put this mask on him. He basically turns into this kind of like Freddy Krueger, Jason-esque, Michael Myers kind of rip-off. And because you have that sort of sibling thing going on, I guess you could say this is more of a Halloween sort of rip-off than anything else, or I should say homage, really. So the story is very, very simple. There's little to no plot in this movie. It is essentially, basically, after so many years after, being abandoned basically in this kind of orphanage, this kind of killer decides to sort of hunt down his sister, who is kind of producing some kind of musical play in this sort of orphanage, and locks everyone in and essentially just goes through everyone and kills them until he can try and get to his sister, really to sort of get back at her for essentially leaving him in this orphanage. And that's really the plot. It's just a kind of some people trapped in a building with this sort of killer on the loose. Nothing more than that. This movie does something which I absolutely hate. It shows you like an end scene right at the beginning of the movie. So we see basically, the first thing you'll see is a shot of the Orphan Killer kind of coming up behind the kind of the female lead. Looks like he's going to sort of finish the job, and that is really the kind of second to last scene of the entire movie. And I absolutely hate it when it does that, because it really does take away any kind of thrill that you might get from seeing what is going to happen, because you know ultimately whatever happened to this woman, she's going to be in that state at some point in the movie. Now, there is actually a couple of scenes after this, but it really doesn't kind of do anything surprising after that. So let's talk about the rest of the film. So I'll come back to the gore, but let me get the negatives out of the way first. On a technical level, this is quite a poor film. The editing is horrendous. I've never seen such bad editing before. It's absolutely horrendous. Really like quick cuts. There's lots of kind of like distant shots from loads of different angles. It's really kind of takes you out of the film. There's loads of technical errors as well. We see sort of in the first half of this movie, quite a lot of people get killed, and there's sort of blood splattered both over the Orphan Killer himself and over the kind of the sort of female lead, and whilst other people are kind of murdered in front of her. Yet in the next shot, there's no blood on either of them, and this happens in a couple of instances. And there's just stuff like that. The end scene that I was talking about, basically we see the kind of the Orphan Killer basically put this kind of this sort of axe up to the kind of the female lead's throat, and then in different angles depending on the camera shot, the angle is different. Sometimes it's kind of near enough sort of vertical, and other times it's kind of horizontal. It's just, and from the wide angle shots, obviously we can see it's kind of holding it at a sort of 90-degree angle. There's loads of these kind of just very sort of technical issues that just sort of hamper this film. The sound quality is quite poor. The Orphan Killers, it talked quite a lot for a slasher, I have to say. But his voice is kind of distorted and it's almost unrecognisable. You can't understand what he's saying some of the times. The acting as well. Some of the supporting cast. The main sort of female lead, I suppose, isn't too bad to her credit. However, I have to say the costume department here, she's meant to be kind of, on a bit of a side note, she's meant to be sort of running this kind of, this particular show in a church, and yet she's wearing fishnet stockings without any pants on, with a little kind of mini skirt. I'm like, really? You're wearing this to a church, are you? And you're meant to be like, whatever. Anyway, so on a side note, as I said, the actual female isn't too bad. I think she's trying to do her best job as a kind of potential scream queen. There are some supporting cast here of other victims that are just very poor, unfortunately. Now, the Orphan Killer himself looks quite effective. Essentially, he's just kind of a big guy in a boiler suit with a kind of dilapidated mask on. Looks, kind of effective, but I don't think it's quite as iconic as kind of like the films that it's homaging, basically. So I guess the thing here that it does hold is that it is quite a gory movie. This is a gory film. There's lots of kind of very sort of close-up shots of brains of being falling out of heads and things like that, and heads getting squished, and lots of kind of gore, people sort of tidying up with, you know, with barbed wire, stuff like that. But I have to say the actual effects themselves are a bit of a mixed bag. Some are pretty good on one hand, but others are clearly sort of, you know, rubber hands and that sort of thing, or just kind of like, you know, fake heads, and so much so that it kind of almost becomes a bit distracting. So while I appreciate, obviously, this is obviously a low budget film, some of the gore effects are undone by just the sort of the shoddiness of the actual sort of props that they're using, unfortunately. So overall, I have to say there's a bit of a disappointment, this film. I was kind of expecting a bit of a cult classic, and it really is quite poorly made, considering, yes, I appreciate this is a low budget film, and obviously, you know, it's never going to be as polished, but you'll see from the sort of just the opening 5 minutes the sort of quality of movie you're going to get here. And there's just so many sort of technical things wrong with this movie. Unfortunately, I would have thought, you know, it doesn't take a lot of budget to kind of to watch the sort of the dailies, I guess, and kind of sort of have some continuity within the film and kind of make a bit more sense sometimes than having these sort of silly mistakes that really do plague this movie. So overall, oh god, the last thing, sorry, the soundtrack. For some reason, this is like obsessed with this heavy metal soundtrack, and it really doesn't fit some of the kind of the scenes. I appreciate sometimes you might want to, you know, tie in particular kind of bands to kind of help promote it and everything, but unfortunately we can get away with one or two songs, but it does it so much that it really kind of drains any tension. And where you could have some kind of operatic score, it just has this kind of heavy metal playing in the background, and it just sort of detracts, unfortunately, from the kind of the suspense that otherwise it would be building up. So overall, I have to say I was very disappointed with this movie. Obviously, I've kind of, you know, I bought this steelbook basically as a bit of a blind buy, and to be honest, it was a bit crap. So I'm going to give this movie a 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.